In the spring of 1984, Japan, a country known for order, safety, and one of the highest criminal solve rates in the world, was pulled into a surreal and terrifying mystery. It began with the brazen kidnapping of a candy company executive and soon spiraled into a nationwide panic involving poisoned sweets, firebombed cars, and a string of mocking letters sent to media and law enforcement. The criminals signed their messages with a name pulled from fiction but branded into reality: the monster with 21 faces. For over a year, this anonymous group taunted police, terrorized some of Japan's largest confectionery companies, and forced the nation to question whether its snacks were safe to eat. The authorities responded with a massive investigation, unprecedented in scale and scope, involving tens of thousands of officers and hundreds of thousands of interviews. And yet, the culprits were never caught. No fingerprints, no confirmed identities, no arrests. Just cryptic messages, an elusive figure with piercing fox-like eyes, and a trail of psychological devastation. To this day, the monster with 21 faces remains unidentified. No one ever stood trial for the kidnapping. No one was held accountable for the poisoned candy. And no definitive answer has ever been given for who these people were, or what exactly they wanted. Welcome to Bad Things. Join us as we retrace the full timeline of the monster with 21 faces, break down the leading theories behind this uniquely Japanese crime saga, and examine, with a clear head and cold logic, what most likely happened. What happened? March 1984 to August 1985. On the night of March 18, 1984, two masked men entered the home of Katsuhisa Ezaki, the 42-year-old president of the candy company, Ezaki Glico. They had first subdued Ezaki's mother at a neighboring house and stolen a key. Inside, they tied up Ezaki's wife and children, found him hiding in the bathroom, and forced him out at gunpoint, still wet from a bath, with no time to dress. He was driven away in a waiting car. A ransom note soon followed, demanding 1 billion yen and 100 kilograms of gold. 3 days later, without any payment made, Ezaki escaped. He forced open a locked door in a warehouse where he was being held and fled barefoot to a nearby house. Though physically unharmed, he provided few details. Police had no suspects and no trail to follow. The incident might have ended there, but instead it escalated. In April, arsonists set fire to several cars outside Glico's Osaka headquarters. A plastic container of hydrochloric acid was later discovered inside the building. Around the same time, a strange letter was delivered to the police. Its tone was taunting. To the police fools, "Are you all stupid? What the hell are you doing with all that manpower?" The writer claimed to be behind the kidnapping and the fires, mocked the investigation, and signed off with an unfamiliar name: the monster with 21 faces. More letters followed. One warned, "Shall we kidnap the head of the prefectural police too?" The messages included bizarre details: the color of the getaway car, the brand of typewriter used, as if daring the authorities to solve the case. On May 10th, a new threat arrived. The monster claimed that Glico's products had been laced with cyanide and would soon appear on store shelves. No demands were made at first, just a warning. Glico responded by pulling its entire product line nationwide. The recall was one of the largest in Japanese history, costing the company over $20 million. Though no poison was found, panic had taken hold. Customers stayed away from packaged snacks. Glico's sales collapsed. Thousands of part-time workers were let go. The monster wrote again. "We've added some special flavor. The flavor of potassium cyanide is a little bitter." As the threat moved from individuals to the public, police pressure intensified, but the criminals stayed ahead. In late June, Glico's subsidiary Marudai Food received a demand, 50 million yen, in exchange for an end to the harassment. Undercover officers arranged a cash drop on a train. During the operation, one investigator noticed a suspicious man watching him. Broad-faced, wearing sunglasses, with narrow, intense eyes. The officer would later describe him as having eyes like a fox. When the handoff signal never came, the man vanished into the crowd. That man would soon become central to the case. Months later, in November 1984, the monster targeted House Foods Corporation with a similar extortion demand. Police staked out the drop point, a highway rest stop in Shiga Prefecture. There, a middle-aged man in a golf cap and sunglasses was spotted loitering near a vehicle. He fit the same description: lean, quiet, and fox-eyed. Before officers could act, he fled. The car was later found abandoned. Inside it was a radio scanner tuned to police frequencies. Authorities believed the suspect was monitoring police communications in real time. A composite sketch was released in early 1985, based on multiple sightings. The figure, now known publicly as the Fox-Eyed Man, was the closest thing police had to a lead. But no one came forward to identify him. In the months that followed, the monster shifted focus. On October 7, 1984, newspapers received a new letter, this time addressed to moms of the nation. "We've added some special flavor. The flavor of cyanide is a little bitter. We've put 20 boxes of Morinaga in stores from Hakata to Tokyo." Police launched a nationwide sweep. In stores across multiple prefectures, they discovered dozens of tampered Morinaga products, including popular candies like Choco Balls and Angel Pies. Some packages contained lethal amounts of cyanide. Each bore a stark warning label. "Danger, contains poison. You'll die if you eat this." The monster with 21 faces. No one consumed the candy. The labels likely prevented deaths. But the public reaction was immediate. Morinaga pulled its inventory. Confidence in processed snacks collapsed. For months, families avoided anything sealed in plastic. After briefly going quiet in early 1985, the monster returned with more threats, again targeting Muradai Ham, House Foods, and other food companies. At least once, a cash drop was arranged and then aborted at the last minute. Police surveillance was nearly always detected. The criminal showed an ability to vanish just as officers moved in. The investigation, meanwhile, had grown to unprecedented scale. According to multiple sources, more than 125,000 people were interviewed. Thousands of leads were pursued. Surveillance footage was reviewed across multiple cities, but no suspects were arrested. The Fox-Eyed Man was never found. The pressure was building not just in the media, but within law enforcement itself. In August 1985, the case reached a breaking point. On August 7th, Shoji Yamamoto, superintendent of the Shiga Prefectural Police, set himself on fire in his backyard. He died shortly after. Yamamoto had been directly involved in operations that failed to catch the suspect at the rest stop months earlier. According to reports, he left no note. The act was understood to be a response to professional shame. 5 days later, on August 12th, the final letter arrived. It read, "Yamamoto of Shiga Prefecture Police died. How stupid of him. We've got more to do other than bullying food-making companies. It's fun to lead a bad man's life." The message continued, "We decided to give our condolence. We decided to forget about torturing food-making companies. After that, the letters stopped. The monster disappeared. The case remained open for years, but as time passed, it faded from headlines. In 1994, the statute of limitations on the kidnapping expired. In 2000, the final charges, including attempted murder and product tampering, also expired. No one was ever arrested. No clear suspects were named. When asked about the investigation years later, officials at Japan's National Police Agency admitted that interagency communication failures and overly cautious strategies may have allowed the criminals to escape justice. The incident became a textbook case in procedural reform. Katsuhisa Ezaki, the original kidnapping victim, maintained that he had no idea who was behind the campaign. He denied rumors that his company had made secret payments or withheld information, telling reporters, "I would never make a deal with people like that." And so it ended. Without a trial, without confessions, and without names. The monster with 21 faces had vanished, leaving behind a stack of letters, a composite sketch, and one of Japan's most confounding unsolved crimes. After 17 months of threats, letters, and poisoned products, the monster with 21 faces disappeared without a trace. The group, or individual, was never identified. No one was arrested. No one confessed. In the decades since, theories have emerged to explain the campaign's origins and motives. Each paints a different picture of who the monster might have been, and why they vanished just as mysteriously as they appeared. Yakuza involvement. Some investigators suspected the attacks were orchestrated by Japan's organized crime syndicates, particularly the Yamaguchi-gumi, the country's largest Yakuza organization. The use of stolen vehicles, surveillance equipment, and extortion tactics fit within the toolkit of professional criminals. Suspicion also fell on Manabu Miyazaki, the son of a Yakuza boss with a history of labor activism and a physical resemblance to the fox-eyed man composite sketch. But while the methods were familiar, the overall approach wasn't. The monster's public taunting, theatrical tone, and repeated failure to collect ransom money didn't align with how the Yakuza typically operate. Miyazaki was ultimately ruled out after providing a solid alibi, and no definitive link to the criminal underworld was ever established. Disgruntled insider or personal grudge. Another possibility focused on someone with a personal connection to Glico, potentially a former employee or individual with knowledge of the company's internal layout and operations. The early attacks, including fires and the acid incident inside company buildings, pointed to someone who knew how to get in and out without being seen. Glico had recently undergone restructuring and layoffs, fueling speculation that the campaign might have been driven by revenge. Some of the letters seemed to target the company's leadership directly, mocking the president and portraying him as weak. It's been suggested that a former worker, union sympathizer, or outsider with inside knowledge may have carried out the attacks, potentially in coordination with others. Despite heavy scrutiny, no one from inside the company was ever charged or publicly named as a suspect. Small independent group. One theory holds that the monster wasn't a large organization or syndicate, but a small organized group, or perhaps a single strategist working with a few trusted collaborators. The letters maintained a consistent tone and voice, and the group showed an ability to stay ahead of police. They aborted ransom drops at the last second, used radio scanners to track law enforcement, and never left behind traceable evidence. This theory is also linked to repeated sightings of the fox-eyed man, who was described as quiet, watchful, and deliberate. The placement of poison-laced products, with clearly marked warning labels, might indicate a desire to cause fear without fatalities. Then again, it could have been a tactic to generate maximum publicity while avoiding murder charges. The group's sudden disappearance after the suicide of Superintendent Yamamoto could suggest a planned exit, or it may have simply been a turning point they hadn't anticipated. The interpretation depends on how much control is attributed to the group's internal logic. Financial motive. Another theory suggests the motive wasn't revenge or ideology, but profit through stock manipulation. Each company targeted by the monster, Glico, Morinaga, House Foods, suffered major losses in reputation and market value. If someone had shorted those stocks in advance, they could have quietly made money without ever touching ransom cash. It's a theory that requires fewer moving parts and less risk, but it also depends on evidence of unusual trading activity, which was never found. While the companies did suffer financially, investigators were unable to link the threats to any specific financial windfall. If profit was the goal, it remained unrealized, or extremely well hidden. Political or ideological extremism. Some observers saw signs of a political motive, or at least anti-authority sentiment. The letters frequently ridiculed the police, called them incompetent, and made public spectacles out of failed sting operations. The final message, mocking Superintendent Yamamoto's death, seemed especially cruel and calculated. There were rumors of left-wing radicals, or even foreign involvement, including North Korean agents, based on Cold War-era tensions and Japan's history of espionage cases. But the monster never issued ideological demands, never targeted government buildings, and never made statements of belief. The victims remained private corporations, and the attacks seemed more personal than political. Each of these theories addresses a different part of the case: means, motive, opportunity. Yet none has ever been confirmed. The result is a case that remains unresolved, not just in terms of who did it, but in what kind of crime it actually was. When all the theories are laid side by side, organized crime, corporate revenge, financial schemes, political extremism, one possibility stands out for how well it accounts for both the scope and the contradictions of the case. The monster with 21 faces was most likely a small, independent group with a mix of insider knowledge, criminal experience, and a personal motive. This explanation doesn't rely on the involvement of a sprawling syndicate or the discipline of an ideological cell. It doesn't depend on secret trading strategies or covert state actors. It simply requires a handful of people who had the means, the grudge, and the nerve to pull it off, and knew when to stop. Insider knowledge without insider visibility. The early phases of the campaign suggest detailed familiarity with Glico's operations. The hydrochloric acid incident required someone to access the company's interior and place the chemical where it would be found, but not immediately trigger an emergency. That kind of precision points to someone who either worked there or was briefed by someone who had. In one letter, the monster casually wrote, "I entered the factory from the side staff entrance. The typewriter we used is a pan writer." These details feel performative, but not fabricated. They hint at the author's desire to demonstrate access, not necessarily to help the police, but to remind the companies that the threat was real. Tactical discipline. This group knew when to push and when to pull back. They abandoned ransom pickups the moment they sensed a trap. They monitored police chatter in real time, using scanners, and moved across prefectural lines with ease. Surveillance attempts were repeatedly outmaneuvered. They operated as if they knew how sting operations worked, not because they were professionals, but because they'd studied them. The fox-eyed man, seen during multiple failed drop operations, seemed to embody this calculated control. He wasn't erratic or violent. He watched, waited, and vanished. In one instance, when police surrounded the drop site, he drove away calmly and ditched the car without panic. Inside was a scanner tuned to regional police frequencies. Controlled chaos. Despite numerous opportunities, the monster never caused physical harm. Poison products were placed in stores, but always with stark warning labels. Danger contains poison. You'll die if you eat this. It was a terrifying gesture, but one that revealed something about the group's intentions. They wanted to destroy public confidence, not human lives. Their letters were often laced with gallows humor, taunts, and literary references. One described a child in their group crying because they couldn't eat candy during the operation. A bizarre but telling touch. And we remember the letter that said, "Shall we kidnap the head of the prefectural police too?" The tone was dark but theatrical. Their campaign functioned as performance as much as crime. Mixed motives. It's likely that the campaign began with a personal motive, perhaps tied to job loss, union conflicts, or resentment toward corporate leadership, and expanded when the group saw how vulnerable these companies were to public pressure. Revenge may have been the initial spark, but financial extortion and spectacle became part of the rhythm. From Glico to other companies like Morinaga and House Foods may reflect a loss of focus or a widening ambition, but the operational playbook remained consistent. Threaten, disrupt, evade, repeat. A chosen exit point. The campaign ended 5 days after Superintendent Shoji Yamamoto ended it, a tragic consequence of the case's public and professional pressure. The monster's final letter, which mocked Yamamoto and then announced they would stop torturing food-making companies, is chilling, but it also reads like closure. "We decided to give our condolence," the letter read. "We are bad guys. That means we've got more to do other than bullying companies." The phrasing is vague, but the intent is clear. They were done. If the group had set out to embarrass police, ruin reputations, and instill fear, the death of a senior police official may have represented the ultimate unintended victory. Whether out of guilt, caution, or satisfaction, they stopped and never returned. Why the other theories fall short. Organized crime lacks a clear motive for disappearing at the height of leverage. Political extremists usually leave ideological breadcrumbs, which were absent here. A lone financial actor would not have needed to stage a kidnapping or carry out a 17-month psychological campaign. But a small, insular group with both personal resentment and operational skill. That explains the scale, the evasiveness, the restraint, and the silence. In the end, the monster with 21 faces was likely not a monster at all, but a few people with the right tools, a shared goal, and a taste for control. They exploited loopholes in corporate security, blind spots in interagency coordination, and a media ecosystem hungry for the next headline. And when the cost got too high, or the satisfaction complete, they vanished. The case is closed. The statute of limitations has expired. But the lesson remains. Sometimes the most perplexing crimes are not committed by masterminds or armies, but by ordinary people with patience, anger, and just enough discipline to disappear. Do you want to bring bad things with you wherever you go? Our episodes are now available as a podcast. Look us up on your favorite podcast app and listen to the most truth-seeking true crime podcast out there.